Let's cover the intro while they're getting coffee. Last time we saw Jacob, who is also called Israel, so if we interchange the names, please don't get confused. Remember, God renamed him as Israel. We saw Jacob travel with his entire family to be joined with Joseph in Egypt. And he was thrilled because he thought Joseph was dead. He had been told he'd been torn up by wild beasts. But his brothers told him, their other sons said, Jacob's alive, and he wants us to come down to Egypt because the famine's going to continue for 5 more years. And so he went down to Egypt, meets up with his son Jacob. It's a great reunion. And he met with Joseph. It's a great reunion. He made Joseph swear that he would bury him back at home. I'm old. I'm down here in Egypt. We're going to be preserved. But you swear that you'll take me back home to the cave that my granddad bought and bury me there. And so let's pick it back up in 47, verse 29. And he says, put your hand under my thigh and deal kindly and truly with me. Please do not bury me in Egypt, but let me lie with my fathers. You shall carry me out of Egypt and bury me in their place. And he said, I will do as you said. He said, swear to me. And he swore to him. So Israel bowed himself on the head of the bed. In other words, okay, I can rest now. Lay down. And so now, chapter 48, verse 1. Now it came to pass after these things, so we don't know how much time passed, but some time passed, that Joseph was told, indeed, your father is sick. And he took him with his 2 sons, Manasseh and Ephraim, and Jacob was told, look, your son Joseph is coming to you. And Israel strengthened himself and sat up on the bed. Then Jacob said to Joseph, God Almighty appeared to me at Luz, which is Bethel. The name Bethel means the house of God. It was called Luz, and then they later changed the name to Bethel. God Almighty appeared to me at Luz, in the land of Canaan, and blessed me, and said to me, behold, I will make you fruitful and multiply you, and I will make you a multitude of people, and give this land to your descendants after you as an everlasting possession. Do you remember when that happened? He was younger. He was a young age of, I think, about 70, fleeing Esau because he had stolen the blessing. And his mom said, you better get out of town. Go away until Esau calms down. And he's fleeing. He's got a staff. He doesn't have much else. And life is tough. And I'm lay down. He has a pillow, a rock for his pillow. And he lays down, and God gives him a dream of a ladder going into heaven. He has access into heaven. And the angels are going up and coming down. It's in Genesis chapter 28. I'm going to read it. So he came to a certain place, which was Bethel, and stayed there all night because the sun had set. And he took one of the stones of that place and put it at his head, and he lay down in that place to sleep. Then he dreamed, and behold, a ladder was set up on earth, and its top reached to heaven. And there the angels of God were ascending and descending on it. And behold, the Lord stood above it and said, I am the Lord God of Abraham, your father, and the God of Isaac. The land on which you lie I will give to you and your descendants. Also your descendants shall be as the dust of the earth. You shall spread abroad to the west and to the east, to the north and the south, and in you and in your seed all the families of the earth shall be blessed. Why? The Messiah is going to come from that, right? Verse 15, behold, I am with you and will keep you wherever you go, and will bring you back to this land. For I will not let you leave until I have done what I have spoken to you. This is a key point in the entire Bible, a key point in the Old Testament especially. God made this very same promise to Abraham and to Isaac and now to Jacob. And now Jacob is repeating this promise to his son, Joseph. Interestingly, we don't see God repeating this promise again after Jacob. But in this promise, God is promising to send the Messiah for all mankind in order to reconcile man to God. He's going to deal with man's sin nature. He's going to correct Genesis chapter 3, when we fell in the garden. So here, Jacob flees Esau and goes north. And then 5 or 6 decades later, Jacob's an old man and he remembers the event. It was that impressive to him. He remembered vividly what God had said, and he's passing it on to his son. Now, there's been a great wrong done to Joseph, who ended up saving the entire family. Joseph had been sold into slavery by his brothers, and in a way, Joseph had lost his share among the inheritance. And it's time for Jacob to reinstate his son Joseph back to the clan. So verse 5, and now your 2 sons, Ephraim and Manasseh, who were born to you in the land of Egypt before I came to you in Egypt, are mine. As Reuben and Simeon, these are his 2 oldest. Your 2 sons are mine, just like my 2 oldest sons. Your offspring, who you beget after them, they'll be yours. They will be called by my name of their brothers in the inheritance. But as for me, when I came from Padan, Rachel died beside me in the land of Canaan on the way, when there was but a little distance to go to Ephrath, which is Bethlehem. And I buried her there on the way to Ephrath, that is Bethlehem. So he's saying, I've got 12 sons, but you were taken from me, and I've got you back now. I'm taking your 2 oldest as if they were 2 more of my sons. I've got 14 sons now. Essentially what he's doing is he's saying, well, what happened with the firstborn son? How much of inheritance did he get? Double portion. He's saying, Joseph, you're getting a double portion, but I'm doing it through your 2 sons. They're going to be like my sons. And so we have 14 tribes of Israel. How do we get down to 12 tribes of Israel if we have 14? Anybody got that one figured out? It's a math problem. We should do it at the school. Okay, first off, we replaced Joseph with Ephraim and Manasseh, his 2 sons. So that's -1, and we get 13, right? The 13 tribes of Israel. Doesn't quite work. The Levites served as priests. Remember, the Levites were the only ones that went and lined up next to Moses when they were making that dumb golden calf at the base of Mount Sinai. Moses said, who will stand with me? And all the Levites gathered to him. So God made the Levites the priests that served the rest. And so we subtract one more tribe by subtracting the Levites. We have the 12 tribes of Israel, and then we have the Levites scattered throughout the nation to serve the nation. Back on track, verse 8. Then Israel saw Joseph's sons and said, who are these? Joseph said to his father, they are my sons, whom God has given me in this place. And he said, please bring them to me, and I will bless them. Okay, now we know the blessings were a big deal at that time, right? They're kind of prophetic. In fact, they were prophetic. So this is an important moment. Bring your 2 boys to me, and I'm going to bless them. Remember, Noah blessed his sons? He said, cursed be Canaan, a servant of servants he shall be to his brethren. Blessed be the Lord, the God of Shem, and may Canaan be his servant. May God enlarge Japheth, and may he dwell in the tents of Shem, and may Canaan be his servant. That was all prophetic. God spoke his blessing of Ishmael and Isaac to Abraham. I'm going to make a nation out of Ishmael also. And then Isaac blessed Jacob and Esau. For Jacob, remember he stole the blessing. May God give you of the dew of heaven, of the fatness of the earth, and plenty of grain and wine. Let people serve you, and nations bow down to you. Be master over your brethren, and let your mother's sons bow down to you. Cursed be everyone who curses you, and blessed be those who bless you. And then Esau came in and said, he stole my blessing. Don't you have anything left for me? Your dwelling shall be in the fatness of the earth. Oh, cool. And of the dew of heaven from above? Great. By your sword you shall live, and you shall serve your brother. That's not great. And it shall come to pass when you become restless that you shall break his yoke from your neck. This happened when Edom rebelled against Israel many, many years later. So you see, these blessings were prophetic, and they were taken seriously because they were prophetic. And so now here's Joseph with his two boys. Wow, what is he going to say? What's this blessing going to be? Verse 10, now the eyes of Israel were dim with age, so that he could not see. Then Joseph brought them near him. He kissed them, embraced them. And Israel said to Joseph, I had not thought to see your face, but in fact, God has also shown me your offspring. Isn't God good? So Joseph brought them from beside his knees, and he bowed down with his face to the earth. And Joseph took them both, Ephraim with his right hand towards Israel's left hand. So here's Ephraim, put him towards Israel's left hand, and Manasseh with his left hand towards Israel's right hand. So he's the older. He goes to the right hand. He's the younger. He goes to the left hand. And brought them near him. He was positioning his two sons according to their birthright. Then Israel stretched out his right hand, here's my right, and laid it on Ephraim's head. Stretched out his left hand, laid it on Manasseh's head. And Joseph went, oh, what are you doing? And he blessed Joseph. So this is a blessing really kind of for all of them. He starts off, it's a blessing for all three of them. God before whom my fathers Abraham and Isaac walked, the God who has fed me all my life long to this day, the angel who has redeemed me from all evil, bless the lads. Let my name be upon them, and the name of my fathers Abraham and Isaac, and let them grow into a multitude in the midst of the earth. So he's blessing them all, and he's saying, let these two young boys become listed with my sons, carrying my name and Abraham and Isaac's name. Now when Joseph saw that his father laid his right hand on the head of Ephraim, it displeased him. So he took his father's hand to remove it from Ephraim's head to Manasseh's head. And Joseph said to his father, no, my father, for this one is the firstborn, but put your hand on his head. But his father refused and said, I know, my son, I know. He also shall become a people, and he also shall be great. But truly his younger brother shall be greater than he, and his descendants shall become a multitude of nations. So his blessing was prophetic. Both Manasseh and Ephraim became great tribes of Israel. And in fact, Andrea, I have a slide of the tribes of Israel. It's down in you got it? Wow, you're good. So let's see, where are these guys? We've got, Manasseh is here. Look how big that area is. I can't read it this close. Where's Ephraim? Right here. This is Ephraim. Manasseh and Ephraim. So he blessed them that day, saying, by you Israel will bless, saying, may God make you as Ephraim and as Manasseh. And thus he set Ephraim before Manasseh. Then Israel said to Joseph, behold, I am dying, but God will be with you and bring you back to the land of your fathers. Moreover, I have given to you one portion above your brothers, which I took from the hand of the Amorite with my sword and my bow. So we talked about this. Moreover, I've given you one portion above your brothers. He's saying, you're getting a double inheritance. It's through your two sons. Technically, you're functioning as the firstborn. And the firstborn also was the spiritual leader and the judge of the family. Now, this part which I took from the hand of the Amorite with my sword and my bow, apparently he got in a fight with a guy and took possession of some land. And he's deeding it over to his son. Chapter 49. And Jacob called his sons, so he's calling all of them. Gather together that I might tell you what shall befall you in the last days. So here we're going to have his blessing upon the 12 sons. Remember, this is prophetic. Gather together and hear, you sons of Jacob, and listen to Israel your father. This is really a historical moment, because up to this time, we'd have a dad and one son, and a dad and maybe two sons. Now we've got the sort of the last patriarch and all 12 sons. What? I think kids in service is awesome. They're our future. All us old geezers, we're going to vapor lock if we don't have the kids. Verse 3. He starts with the oldest. Reuben, you are my firstborn, my might and the beginning of my strength, the excellency of dignity, and the excellency of power. These are all the things that were attributed to the firstborn. He had that power and that dignity. He's going to be the spiritual leader of the family. Because unstable as water, verse 4, unstable as water, you shall not excel. Boy, this is a change in direction, isn't it? Because you went up to your father's bed, then you defiled it. He went up to my couch. So he forfeited the rights of the firstborn because he had an affair with his stepmother, Bilhah. She was the mother of Dan and Naphtali. In Genesis 35, you read about this. And the tribe of Reuben really never did excel. We have no prophets, no judges, or kings from the tribe of Reuben. Nothing really remarkable from that tribe. Moves on. Verse 5, Simeon and Levi are brothers. Instruments of cruelty are in their dwelling place. Let not my soul enter their council. Let not my honor be united to their assembly. For in their anger they slew a man, and in their self-will they hamstrung an ox. Cursed be their anger, for it is fierce, and their wrath, for it is cruel. I will divide them in Jacob and scatter them in Israel. Now Simeon and Levi, do you remember what they did? Remember their sister? Well, I got to go and check out the town in Shechem. And she ends up having sex with the Canaanite son. We don't know if it was a rape or was it, voluntarily. Anyhow, these two brothers get mad and they kill the whole town. They slaughter the whole town. They trick the guy saying, yeah, you can be part of us and we'll marry and intermarry. Go get circumcised. And as they're recovering from circumcision, they go and wipe out the whole town. They tricked them. Now, we have different types of anger in the Bible. We have godly anger and ungodly anger. And the problem with these two brothers is it was not godly anger. Listen to godly anger. I'm in Ephesians chapter 4. Therefore, putting away lying, well, they lied. Get circumcised and then you can be part of us. But they had them get circumcised and they tricked them. Put away lying. Let each one of you speak truth with his neighbor. For we are members of one another. Be angry and do not sin. Do not let the sun go down on your wrath, nor give place to the devil. So he's saying, speak truth, don't sin, get it settled. The key is don't let a root of bitterness sprout up. Now, ungodly anger, also Ephesians chapter 4, let all bitterness, wrath, anger, clamor, and evil speaking be put away from you with all malice. Have malice towards it. Get rid of it. The difference between these two can be boiled down to really our self-will. I want justice. Those guys did me wrong. I'm going to get them. Versus, what's your will, God? Yeah, that was unfair to me, but that's okay. I can take it. I want to follow you and behave your way. So this prophecy that we just read on the blessing, it was fulfilled. Simeon was the weakest tribe of the 12. And he became scattered among all of his brothers. He said both tribes would be scattered. Interestingly, Levi was also scattered. How was Levi scattered? We just talked about it. They were the priests. They were scattered as a blessing around all of the nation. They were the ones that gathered with Moses, and they end up being chosen by God to serve as priests to the nation Israel. Verse 8, Judah. Now, is Judah going to be a little more detailed, you think? I see heads nodding. Yes, why? Where does the Messiah come from? Jesus comes from the tribe of Judah. So he's going to talk a little more prophetically about Judah. Judah, you are he whom your brothers shall praise. Your hand shall be on the neck of your enemies. Your father's children shall bow down before you. Judah is a lion's whelp. From the prey, my son, you have gone up. He bows down, he lies down as a lion. As a lion, who shall rouse him? I'm not going to rouse him. The scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor a lawgiver from between his feet, until Shiloh comes. And to him shall be the obedience of the people, binding his donkey to the vine, and his donkey's colt to the choice vine. He washed his garments in wine, and his clothes in the blood of grapes. His eyes are darker than wine, and his teeth whiter than milk. All right, let's break this down. Now remember the son, Judah. Let's start looking at him. He's the one who said, let's not kill Joseph. Let's sell him. We could make money on him. We'll sell him into slavery into Egypt. What a great personality. And then he's back home, and he's not supposed to marry a Canaanite woman, and he goes to the next town and he doesn't even marry her. He shacks up with a Canaanite woman. He's the one that the Messiah is going to come through. And he's shacking up with a Canaanite woman. Well, God resolved it because he dealt wrongly with his daughter-in-law, who was Hebrew, Tamar, and ended up having a baby through Tamar, who is in the lineage of the Messiah. But interestingly, even though this guy's kind of a creep, God chooses to bring the Messiah through him. So we have hope if we're dysfunctional, you guys. God can choose us too. Judah, you are he whom your brothers shall praise. Your hand shall be on the neck of your enemies. This is a description of a victorious warrior. Brother shouting, way to go, you beat him. Awesome. Your hand's on the neck of the enemies. Oh, you're victorious. Your father's children shall bow down before you. He lies down as a lion. The scepter shall not depart from Judah. No lawgiver from between his feet. These are all references to a ruler, a leader, a king. And of course, who is Jesus? The ruler, the leader, the king. To him shall be the obedience of the people. Now, some translations say obedience of nations. This is a clear reference to the Messiah that's going to come from the line of Judah. And one day, all nations will bow down and obey Jesus until Shiloh comes. So we're going to have a victorious ruler that the nations are going to obey when Shiloh comes, or until Shiloh comes. Shiloh means he whose right it is. We're going to have a victorious leader who's going to lead until he whose right it is comes. And all the nations are going to bow down to him. Someone from King David's line was ruler over God's people all the way until the Herods. Remember creepy King Herod? He was part Jewish, of the line of Judah. Even Daniel, when he was in captivity, was of the line of Judah. Now verse 11, binding his donkey to the vine, washing garments in wine, and his clothes in the blood of grapes. This is an interesting thing. There's a couple of views. I think the dominant view is that it's a symbol of prosperity. One day, under the tribe of Judah, wine is going to be so plentiful, which is a symbol of prosperity, that you're going to use it for common tasks. You're going to wash your clothes in it. I've got so much wine, I'll just wash my clothes in it. I guess they're all one color, but I'm going to wash my clothes in it. Oh, you bring in the donkey. You know what? Tie him up to the grapevine. Oh, yeah, there's grapes on there, but I don't care. He can eat them. He's going to be so healthy. He's living off of grapevines. I don't have to get the post to tie him to. Kind of a cool picture, isn't it? Now, of course, we've got clothes washed in wine, which would make them red, which reminds us of Jesus' sacrifice on the cross. Also, we have God's winepress of wrath in the book of Revelation. I'm not sure if these two fit in this case, but it's interesting to note them. Verse 12, his eyes are darker than wine and his teeth whiter than milk. This is a picture of a young, healthy, strong person. Nice white teeth, good eyes, strong teeth. Neat picture. Zebulun shall dwell by the haven of the sea. He shall become a haven for ships, and his border shall adjoin Sidon. Okay, this one I'm a little bit lost on. If he's the haven of the sea and he's a haven for ships, where's his territory going to be? He's right here. Now he is between the Mediterranean and the Sea of Galilee. And some say shall dwell by means it's within view. When you have it figured out, let me know, okay? Look at you guys, when we get to a section of Scripture we don't understand, what are we to do? Anybody ever done that? Section you don't, move on. You know, next time through, God may reveal it to you. I don't know what the answer is on this one. His territory was landlocked. But it was about halfway between the two seas. Now, springboarding a little bit, Zebulun raised the largest number of troops for King David. Look at how tiny their territory is. I'm in 1 Chronicles chapter 12. Of Zebulun, there were 50,000 who went out to battle, expert in war, with all weapons of war, stout-hearted men who could keep ranks. So they were small, but they were powerful. Verse 14, Issachar is a strong donkey lying down between two burdens. He saw that rest was good and that the land was pleasant. He bowed his shoulder to bear a burden and became a band of slaves. Do I need to explain that, or you got it? Some of these you kind of read the first time and you go, huh? The idea here is that he's strong, but he's kind of lazy. There's a burden and there's a burden. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to take a nap. Instead of picking up that burden or picking up that burden. And he was the target of invading armies. And indeed, they became slaves. They were captured early on and became slaves. Dan, which sort of means judge. Dan shall judge his people. So we've got a little play on words here. As one of the tribes of Israel, Dan shall be a serpent by the way, a viper by the path, that bites the horse's heels, so that its rider shall fall backwards. Now, verse 17, is that a positive verse or a negative verse, do you think? I'm sorry? Negative? Anybody say? Positive. You know what? I'm not sure, but some say that because of verse 18, I have waited for your salvation, O Lord, because Jacob is putting that verse in there. It means that verse 17 is from a positive sense. Not sure. But during the period of Judges, Dan provided a very important judge named Samson. But he did become troublesome for the tribe of Israel. Dan fell into idolatry early on. And remember Jeroboam, the king of the northern 10 tribes when Israel split, and Jeroboam didn't want the people going back to Jerusalem to worship because they might rejoin the southern kingdom. So he said, I'll make 2 temples and put a golden calf in them. I'll put one down in the south and I'll put one way up north in Dan. Dan had a city up there. There's a Tel Dan. We're going to see it when we go to Israel, where that calf worship was. So they did become a problem to Israel. Verse 19, Gad, a troop shall tramp upon him, but he shall triumph at last. Now Gad is on the east side of the Jordan. Right here. So if you have King Nebuchadnezzar coming up here and attacking, coming down this way, or you have Egypt coming up here and attacking, guess who's in the way? Guess who the first tribe is? And maybe that's why we say Egads. They were in the way. They got wiped out early. So a troop shall tramp upon him, and they certainly did. But prophecy is that in the end, Gad is going to triumph. Bread from Asher shall be rich, and he shall yield royal dainties. Now, Asher settled in the northern coastal region that included Tyre and Sidon, which were very profitable towns. The land was rich for Asher, providing even luxuries. And Moses repeats this prophecy in Deuteronomy chapter 33. And of Asher he said, Asher is most blessed of sons. Let him be favored by his brothers, and let him dip his foot in oil. Naphtali is a deer let loose. He uses beautiful words. But that's a pretty short blessing, isn't it? I wonder if he went, hey, wait a minute, isn't there any more? But his blessing is brief, just like Asher's. It's going to be a time of freedom and prosperity. It's interesting that, think of where Jesus did most of his ministry, where he hung out and taught. It was by the Sea of Galilee. Remember, he went to Capernaum, which is way up here, and he hung out and walked around all this region. He did come down this way, but most of his work was up here. And so I wonder if that's a reference to these beautiful words. Joseph, verse 22. Joseph is a fruitful bough by a well. His branches run over the wall. The archers have bitterly grieved him, shot at him and hated him. But his bow remained in strength, and the arms of his hands were made strong by the hands of the mighty God of Jacob. From there is the shepherd, the stone of Israel. By the God of your fathers who will help you, and by the Almighty who will bless you with blessings of heaven above, blessings of the deep that lies beneath, blessings of the breasts and of the womb. The blessings of your father have excelled the blessings of my ancestors up to the utmost bound of the everlasting hills. They shall be on the head of Joseph and on the crown of the head of him who is separate from his brothers. So this is really a move of recognition of what has happened with Joseph. Archers have bitterly grieved him, shot at him, and hated him. He suffered. He suffered trials. But he remained strong. Verse 24, his bow remained in strength, and the arms of his hands were made strong. And he has indeed been blessed, even more, you could say, than his forefathers. God really, he put him in there as the governor of the entire nation of Egypt. Benjamin is a ravenous wolf. In the morning he shall devour the prey, and at night he shall divide the spoil. Benjamin, they were tough dudes. Ehud in Judges 3 was a Benjaminite. And he went against the Edomites. Oh, my kids used to love this story. He's the guy that went to Edom with the dagger, and the king of Edom, and he was just this huge fat guy. And he stuck the dagger in him, and the whole blade and the handle and everything disappeared in the rolls of his fat. I don't know why 12-year-old kids just love that thought. But that's who Ehud was. Saul, Israel's first king, was a Benjamite. Paul, the apostle, he was a tough guy. He was a Benjamite. Now, the tribe of Benjamin was almost wiped out by Israel because they mistreated a Levite's concubine. And you guys maybe remember the story. The Levite goes into the city of Gibeah, and the men take her at night and end up killing her, mistreated her and killed her. And so the Levite cut her into 12 pieces and sent a piece to each tribe because it was so disgusting what had happened. I think that's pretty disgusting. But he did that, and the nation Israel was shocked. So they all gathered together. We're going to wipe out Gibeah. This is terrible. And they raised 400,000 foot soldiers to fight against Benjamin. Benjamin rallied their army, 26,000. 26,000 against 400,000. What are the odds there? Pretty huge. So day one, let's go out and fight. Benjamin killed 22,000 enemies, won the day. Day two, they go out and fight. Benjamin only killed 18,000 that day and won the day. Israel's going back. God, what should we do? Go out third day. I'll be with you today. So day three, they went out, and they started the fight and then pretended to retreat, like all the other days. We're losing. And while the Benjaminites were chasing them, they sent other troops into the city. And the signal was, when you see smoke from the city, turn around and start fighting the Benjaminites. Benjaminites will get them from both sides. And so they lost that day. Now remember, they had 26,000 troops. They lost 25,000 that day. Benjamin did. There were 1,000 left. And so Israel goes home and they start grieving. Oh no, we're going to lose the tribe of Benjamin. They're going to peter out, and it's not right that we should lose one of the 12 tribes. What are we going to do? And all the people swore when they were mad at Benjamin, we're not going to give them any of our daughters to marry. There's no way. We're swearing to God we won't give them any of our daughters. And so the problem was they're going to disappear as a tribe because they're so small, and you won't give them any of your daughters to marry. What are we going to do? What would you do? The elder said, there's a yearly feast of the Lord in Shiloh, where all the young women go up and dance and celebrate. So you men hide in the vineyards, and then when the young women are going up to dance and celebrate, each of you take a wife. It's kind of a 7 brides for 7 brothers things, you know. And so they all captured wives. And when the dads got mad, they said, hey, be kind to them. Look you kept your vow. You didn't give a daughter because they were stolen. So you really kept your vow, but we got around it. Did God tell them to do this? No, it's man, but it's an interesting story. Maybe like a Christmas Eve story or something. These were tough dudes. He was the youngest. Verse 28, all these are the 12 tribes of Israel, and this is what their father spoke to them. And he blessed them. He blessed each one according to his own blessing. Then he charged them and said to them, now he's repeating his charge that he made to Joseph, I am to be gathered to my people. Bury me with my fathers in the cave that is in the field of Ephron the Hittite, in the cave that is in the field of Machpelah, which is before Mamre, in the land of Canaan, which Abraham bought with the field of Ephron the Hittite as a possession for a burial place. Remember, he buried his wife there. He was so grieved when she died. So he bought this cave and the field in front of it to have a burial place. And by the way, they know where that is. They still know where that is today. There they buried Abraham and Sarah, his wife. There they buried Isaac and Rebekah, his wife. And there I buried Leah. The field and the cave is there. I'm sorry, the field and the cave that is there were purchased from the sons of Heth. They own the land, bury me there. And when Jacob had finished commanding his sons, he drew his feet up into bed and breathed his last and was gathered to his people. So we have the death of Jacob with all of his sons around him. Verse chapter 50, the last chapter. We'll go just a little bit longer today, you guys, to finish up, okay? Then Joseph fell on his father's face and wept over him and kissed him. Yeah, Dad just died and he's grieving. And Joseph commanded his servants, the physicians, to embalm his father. Well, why? They want to take him back up to bury him in the cave. They have to preserve him. So the physicians embalmed Israel. 40 days were required for him, for such are the days required for those who are embalmed. And the Egyptians mourned for him 70 days. So they embalmed him, but also there was a royal mourning called. I guess Joseph must have really been in high status because the whole nation mourns the death of his dad. Now when the days of his mourning were past, Joseph spoke to the household of Pharaoh, saying, if now I have found favor in your eyes, please speak in the hearing of Pharaoh, saying, my father made me swear, saying, behold, I am dying. In my grave, which I dug for myself in the land of Canaan, there you shall bury me. Now therefore, please let me go up and bury my father, and I will come back. And Pharaoh said, go up and bury your father, as he made you swear. So he's getting permission to go bury Dad. So Joseph went up to bury his father, and with him went up all the servants of Pharaoh, the elders of his house, and all the elders of the land of Egypt. Wow, this is a big group, isn't it? As well as the house of Joseph, his brothers, and his father's house. Only their little ones, their flocks and their herds, they left in the land of Goshen. And there went up with him both chariots and horsemen, and it was a very great gathering. What do you think the Canaanites thought when they saw this big group coming up the King's Highway? Had to be impressive. Then they came to the threshing floor of Atad, which is beyond the Jordan. So they're on the east side of the Jordan. The King's Highway in those days just ran up on the east side of the Jordan, all the way up, went all the way like that. And so they're coming up, and I don't know if they stop here. We don't know where that is, but they stopped somewhere on the east side of the Jordan and had a little service. They had a lamentation, it says here. They mourned there with a great, very solemn lamentation. He observed 7 days of mourning for his father. And when the inhabitants of the land, the Canaanites, saw the mourning of the threshing floor of Atad, they said, this is a deep mourning of the Egyptians. Therefore its name was called Abel Mizraim, which is beyond the Jordan. So his sons did for him just as he had commanded them. For his sons carried him to the land of Canaan and buried him in the cave of the field of Machpelah before Mamre, which Abraham bought with the field from Ephron the Hittite as property for a burial place. And after he buried his father, Joseph returned to Egypt, he and his brothers and all who went up with him to bury his father. dead, buried, it's all done. Now they're down in Egypt. When Joseph's brothers saw their father was dead, they said, uh-oh, perhaps Joseph will hate us and may actually repay us for all the evil which we did to him. You know, it's logical thinking. Maybe it was nice to us because Dad was around. Now he's going to get even because we sold him into slavery. That really was bad. So they sent messengers to Joseph saying, before your father died, he commanded, saying, thus you shall say to Joseph, I beg you, please forgive the trespass of your brothers and their sin. Do you think that Dad really said that? When I die, you guys have to go tell him that I said, please forgive you. For they did evil to you. Now please forgive the trespass of the servants of the God of your father. You know, he may have said that. And Joseph wept when they spoke to him. Look at his response. He's saddened that they even think this. Then his brothers also went and fell down before his face and said, behold, we are your servants. Boy, that fulfilled the prophecies of the wheat shafts falling down before him. But Joseph says to them, do not be afraid, for am I in the place of God? But as for you, you meant evil against me, but God meant it for good, in order to bring it about as it is this day, to save many people alive. Now therefore, do not be afraid. I will provide for you and your little ones. And he comforted them and spoke kindly to them. The key phrase that I see here is, am I in the place of God? Joseph rightly understands vengeance doesn't belong to him, even if he's mad. And you know what? He was 20 years in slavery. He has reason to be mad. He does acknowledge that they sinned and that they meant evil. You know what? Our sin has consequences. He's not saying, oh, it's okay that you sinned. No, you sinned and you meant evil. But I listened to God instead of my heart that would perhaps want vengeance. And he acknowledges that God worked it for good to save the whole family. Isn't this a great example for us of a heart that extends grace? Trusting God through the difficult times. So Joseph dwelt in the land of Egypt, he and his father's household, and Joseph lived 110 years. Joseph saw Ephraim's children to the third generation, his great-great-grandchildren. The children of Machir, the son of Manasseh, were also brought up on Joseph's knees. And Joseph said to his brethren, I'm dying, but God will surely visit you and bring you out of this land to the land of which he swore to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob. Then Joseph took an oath from the children of Israel, saying, God will surely visit you, and you shall carry up my bones from here. So Joseph died, being 110 years old, and they embalmed him, and he was put in a coffin in Egypt. So he also wants to return to the land of God's promise. Did that happen? In Exodus chapter 13, we see that Moses carries Joseph's bones back to the promised land. 400 years later. And that's the book of Genesis. As an application for us, I want to think back over the whole book. What type of man did God honor? We know they're dysfunctional all the way through the whole genealogy. Remember, Abel offered a heartfelt sacrifice, and Cain's was not of the heart. Later on, we read that Cain departed from the Lord. Seth didn't. Ham rejoiced over Noah's shame. Shem and Japheth covered it. Abram believed God's promise, while Lot set up a camp next to Sodom. Ishmael was the result of man's work to help God. Isaac was the result of God's work to bless man. Esau despised his birthright, sold it for a bowl of soup. Jacob, who was a trickster, treasured his birthright and even took efforts to receive the blessings and promises of God. The sons of Jacob were into the world. They sold their brother into slavery. They were goofing off all the time. But Joseph remained faithful to God. Even though he was in the world, he remained steadfast. Are you getting the theme here? It wasn't because anybody did anything good. It was a heart that was in relationship with God. It was a heart that was choosing God. It wasn't, well, these are the rules and maybe I can get away with it. It was, God, you're most important to me. And what I do, really, even though I make mistakes, what I do is based on you and your wants and your leading. So the points to remember, I think, in the book of Genesis, first off, the primary theme of Genesis and the entire Old Testament is that God is bringing a Messiah to save us from our sin nature. And we see the lineage as we go through the entire Old Testament. And God chose people not based on their good works, but based on their hearts in wanting to be in relationship with him and wanting to believe him. It's so simple that it's hard. It's really simple. He just wants our hearts. He loves us, wants us to love him back, wants us to follow him. And if we choose anything else like Lot did, setting up his camp by Sodom, it just ends up in disaster. That's the book of Genesis. We'll be in the New Testament next time.